Zaina Arafat.
Hi, thank you so much. So lovely to be here. I teach in New York City. I teach at Barnard, and I teach also at LIU Post. And it's just really, it's such a nice thing to visit different campuses and to just get a sense of the different cultures and the different atmospheres and just, I don't know, different, like just change the scenery. So I appreciate that, and thank you for this invitation. So I wanted to just chat a little bit about the theme of folklore, and then after that, we're gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna kind of talk and read at the same time, as in I may kind of grapple through some thoughts as I'm reading what I've written about folklore. So, and another thing to note is that I sometimes close my eyes when I'm thinking, so don't be alarmed. So, the term folklore, I have to admit, has always been quite loaded for me. As a Palestinian in particular, there's something about its proximity to myth and legend. It was as though, I suppose I'd always interpreted that word, folklore, as implying that there was something fictive about Palestinian heritage anytime I heard it applied to that particular canon, right? As though ours was a culture that was in some way made up, right? And so this part of me always had this slight resistance to the word. As a Palestinian American writer, I've spent so many years trying to get people to see the reality of our history, of our context, of our beautiful culture. I've tried to come up with analogies that would get people to understand our plight and to see that to not stand up for Palestinian rights is to be perhaps on the wrong side of history. And yet, despite these efforts, I still found myself in a position of constantly needing to assert an identity that felt like it was under great threat. Once, in the margins of a piece I had written, an editor at a very reputable publication struck the word Palestine from my draft, and in the comments she wrote, "Palestine does not exist." In her mind, I wondered what she meant by that. If Palestine didn't exist, did Palestinians not exist? But then I received this invitation, and it led me to really reconsider my relationship with this word, and to really, really think about it, and to think about inheritance in particular, and passing down lineage, and especially when it comes to Palestine and Palestinianness. For years, I've thought about this as the daughter of Palestinian immigrants growing up outside of Washington, D.C., and now I think about it as a mother of two daughters who are that much more removed from our culture, and yet just as much Palestinian in my eyes. You see, I had the luxury of going to Jordan and Palestine every summer, to Nablus, which is my parents' hometown in the West Bank, of growing up in a predominantly Arabic-speaking household. My parents spoke only in Arabic at home. In fact, I only ever understood about a third of what they were saying, which I didn't even realize wasn't really the norm among friends. I had the luxury of being immersed in a community of other Arabs also living in the diaspora and who came from all over the Levant and the Gulf, since my parents' friends were mostly Arabs. Of course, other immigrants often do seek out or immigrants often seek out other immigrants when they relocate abroad. I had the advantage of having an Arabic teacher come twice a week to our house to teach us language and religion, of living with people who had direct access to Palestine and to growing up there and to all of the societal expectations and norms and all of the cultural know-how, all of the wasta, for better or for worse. And though at times this in-betweenness that I experienced, this hyphenated identity, Palestinian American, which is now essentially a kind of contradiction in terms, was painful and alienating and othering and awkward, and left me without a full sense of belonging here or there. It was also deeply enriching. And of course, I couldn't see it at the time, but now, well, I think it shaped my entire life. My career, my personality, my romantic partners, my current spouse, who is also somewhat of a hybrid herself. And so back to my daughters, who, well, they too are Palestinian, one generation further removed from me, and therefore one generation further removed from all of what my brother and I had, right? All of that access to Palestine and Palestinian heritage. And though it's true that successive generations tend to eventually lose that contact with the native culture, I refuse to allow that to happen to them. I still very much want them to have that part of their heritage, and I know it will be harder for them to hold on to, and more effort for me to impart. And it's not just that they are further removed from it, as works and as happens with diaspora, but it's also that Palestine is facing constant, dramatic, violent erasure, more and more with every passing day. It always was, but as the map and timeline on our kitchen fridge demonstrates, it's gone from being this big to being this small. As a place, as an identity, and as a culture, even as a concept, even as an aspiration. So all of this kind of brings me back to the topic at hand, which is folklore, and that question of how do you hold on to a culture, to a place, to a heritage that you can't fully access, that you feel is slipping away, that's facing such violent erasure, especially when you're in the diaspora. How do you pass that heritage down? How else do you maintain a connection to a homeland when it's shrinking with each new settlement, each land theft, and each war? How do you hold on to this identity that's facing such erasure? In some sense, it's precisely through stories, through lore, through listening to great uncles and aunts tell us these stories over argile and bizar on our grandmother's veranda, to hearing my mother's version of her memories and my father's version of his. And all of these stories, in their repeated tellings, they get transformed. They're garbled by the gaze of time and distance and nostalgia. They are perhaps even subverted by necessity to avoid a Western gaze, to avoid scrutiny from an oppressor, to avoid censorship. Folklore, then, is about persistence. Samud is the word in Arabic, as the late Palestinian poet Arafat al-Arir also refers to it repeatedly throughout his book. It's about resilience and perseverance in the face of erasure and displacement. It's a refusal to let go. It's a subversive way of keeping a culture, a people, a place alive, no matter how much force and resistance it faces. So with an ever-shrinking territory, we are left with a map made of stories. So yeah, the point is that just this invitation itself and thinking through this theme over the last few weeks has really made me reconsider and embrace this idea of the importance and of folklore, and to sort of change my own relationship with this term, particularly just through this sort of journey of thinking through inheritance. So yeah, thank you, and I'll sit down.